Hello. So, ayan ulit. Ito na naman tayo ulit para sa isang serye ng isang video discussion regarding the interstate system and the global governance. So, kung napanood nyo na yung unang video dito, yung interstate system, ano yung mga pinag-aralan natin doon? So, ang mga binanggit natin doon, una, ano ba yung mga characteristics ng isang territorial state? So, nandyan yung territory, people, government, yung law, yung tinatawag na homogenization. Okay? So kung mapapansin, itong mga elementong ito ay nakita nating nababago because of globalization. At dahil sa globalization, nagkaroon ng mga tendencies no affecting the major state in the um, affecting the major states. So merong mga elements na pinakita doon kung paanong ang estado ay nagkaroon ng mas mahinang kapangyarihan in terms of other states, no? So kung mapapansin, nabanggit doon yung konsepto ng consumer individualism, decline of centralization, decline of ideological mass parties, yung concept ng wave of the wave or two of immigration, etc. So, ang main theory nung ating naunang discussion ay actually yung tungkol sa konsepto na ang estado ay nagbabagong yung kanyang characteristics at nagiging mas blurry. Yun yung actually yun na yun. Nagiging mas hindi na masyadong defined yung mga characteristics na nabanggit about the state because of the process of globalization. So, in this lesson naman, ang pag-aaralan natin ngayon ay yung konsepto na kung ang estado ay merong mas kailangan niyang makipag-connect with other states in order to survive in the globalization phase, ano ngayon yung mga what is now global governance? How are states being governed? So parang ang estado ngayon, parang siya ngayon yung mga tao na kailangang i-govern, no? So sino yung nag-govern? Ano yung bakit kailangang i-govern ang states? Yun ang pag-uusapan natin today. So yung main thesis na nabanggit ko na rin nung nakaraan at yun ulit ang ngayon to begin our discussion. Globalization has dispersed the political and economic power well beyond the state. So yung kapangyarihan ng estado, lalo na sa aspeto ng ekonomiya, no, has become dispersed. Ibig sabihin, mas lumawak. Kasi ngayon, hindi na lamang yung national economy ang kailangang i-manage ng isang estado or ng isang gobyerno. Meron siyang, ang kailangan niya i-manage ay yung konsepto na kailangan mo makipag-trade with other countries and you have to include yourself in the international economy. So, to begin, what is a state and what is a nation? Pag sinabing state, ito different definition to from Hobsbawm. Pero according to Weber 1997, it is a compulsory political organization with continuous operations, legitimate use of physical force in the enforcement of its order. Kay Bull naman, 1995, it is an independent political community, each of which possess a government and asserts sovereignty in relation to a particular portion of the Earth's surface and a particular segment of the human population. So kung mapapansin, yung definition ni Bull, 1995, confides more with the 4 or 5 elements of the state. So pero parehas sa definition ni Weber and Bull pertains to the state as a political organization or a political community. Ano naman si nation? Pag sinabi mong nation, it is a historically emphasized organic ties that hold groups of people together and inspire sense of loyalty and belongingness. So according to Benedict Anderson, it is an imagined political community. Pag sinabi mong nation, hindi siya kasing defined ng isang estado, no? Hindi mo kailangan ng territory, hindi mo kailangan ng concept ng laws, ng government. A nation is basically a group of people who believes in certain things, no, or aspire certain things. Kaya nga madalas sa mga literature may mga writers na sinasabing nation states because it's not always the case that a state is a nation eh. Kasi hindi lahat ng individual sa isang estado might believe or might aspire similar things. However, in a nation, may ganong konsepto that you aspire and you believe in certain elements. Kaya may mga writers that would prefer to refer to the state as a nation state instead of the state lang. Kasi pag state lang, parang nawawala yung konsepto ng similarity, no? Yun yung actually, kung babalikan niyo si Hobsbawm, yun yung tinatawag niyang homogenization. Actually, yung homogenization, similarities yun eh. Kaya, kung mapapansin, these are the differences of writers and authors. May mga authors that believe that state should already be called a state because meron namang konsepto ng homogenization na doon. For some writers naman, they believe that there should be the concept of a nation state wherein the state with its defined elements together with the concept of a nation to which similarities in beliefs and aspirations are included. Okay. So the 5 themes in looking at the role of the state and its relation to its citizen in a globalized world. So, yung economic interdependence na pag-aralan natin yan, economic and political integration, the rise of international law and universal principle, the rise of transnational activism, communication networks, new media, and the state. So kung nabasa nyo yung isa pang reading natin kay Mark Coser, so kung mapapansin nyo, ito yung last 3, international law, transnational activism, communication networks, ito yung mga nabanggit doon. Though medyo kasi, more on historical yung approach ng writing, so wag tayong malilito kung paano niya isinulat. Okay? The state in a world of economic interdependence. So Thomas Friedman called the situation of the state a golden straitjacket because the neoliberal order forced the state into policies that suit the preferences of investment houses and corporate executives who swiftly move money and resources into countries. So, ano yung sinasabing golden straitjacket? Ito yung, kung nakakita na kayong straitjacket, ito yung sinusuot sa mga preso para hindi siya makagalaw. Okay? So, ang nangyari dito, parang sinasabi niya na ang estado ay nasa isang sitwasyon kung saan nakasuot sa kanya yung golden straitjacket. Bakit golden? Kasi, kung mapapansin, gold represents wealth. So, kahit na sabihin mong pumapasok, nagkakaroon ng capacities ang states towards economic wealth. Ang problema, meron siyang straitjacket, hindi siya ngayon makagalaw because the neoliberal order has forced. So, parang na-force siya ngayon or hindi siya ngayon makagalaw kasi the neoliberal order, pag sinabi mo namang neoliberal order, ito yung konsepto ng free market competition. So, napag-usapan na rin natin ito before, yung konsepto na it is often characterized with the concept or belief that sustained economic growth as a means to achieve human progress will result to free market. So, ibig sabihin, malayang gumagalaw ang market in order to pursue individuals to purchase and consume. So, dun sa ganung konsepto, yung estado mo ngayon, parang hindi siya ngayon makagalaw kasi kailangan niya ng economic wealth, but at the same time, the state is now being forced to not do anything in order for the market to prosper. Okay? So in the final quarter of the 20th century, the fall of the Soviet communism led Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher to embrace the laissez-faire. So dahil nakitang effective yung neoliberal order, no, yung pagpapalaya sa market, allowing the markets to run as it is without the state, without the government, Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, si Ronald Reagan sa US, si Margaret Thatcher sa Germany, imposed the concept of the laissez-faire economics. Nabanggit ko na rin to doon sa naunang video. The laissez-faire economics is the let-alone policy to which you limit the capacity, actually no government or state intervention in terms of the economy. So kapag kasi ganun, ibig sabihin ng no government intervention, pag to the extreme na laissez-faire economics, ang sinasabi doon, regardless kung anong gawin ng mga sellers, the government will not intervene. Hindi siya makikialam. Hindi siya gagawa ng policies in relation to the market. So, hahayaan niya na ang market ay mag-run as it is. The buyers and the sellers would run as it is, dictate the price, they would not, the government will not interfere in the the pricing of goods. So sa Pilipinas, hindi pa tayo full laissez-faire kasi you have still the DTI that promotes the suggested retail prices of goods. You still have policies that would observe how buyers or how sellers would sell their goods. So hindi pwedeng hindi sumunod sa SRP, hindi pwedeng hindi naglalagay ng information sa likod ng mga products, etc. So these are simple things, but the government still has hold in the market. Sa laissez-faire kasi, to the extent ng laissez-faire, the government actually has no say na in relation to the market. So the government and the market are two separate entities. Para the church and the state. The church cannot interfere with the government's actions, same as the government cannot interfere with the church. Parang ganun na halos. Pero kasi wala pang state or bansa na gumagawa ng full laissez-faire economy because it's difficult to just allow the market to run as it is. As individuals, especially buyers, would be, antawag dito, they can be subject to economic abuse. Ibig sabihin, pwedeng magtaas ka ng masyadong mataas yung presyo na hindi naman in relation to dun sa product na binibili mo. So yun, this became the model for the struggling poor countries. However, the laissez-faire economics was used as a model for countries that are developing because developing countries need to open their economies, need to practice less state intervention in their markets in order for them to generate more wealth, to generate more investments from other states or from other countries, and to create capacities for development. Kasi simple lang naman ang konsepto. The more that other states invest in a certain state, like say for example, marami nag-invest sa Pilipinas. Pag marami nag-invest sa Pilipinas, the Philippines will now have to create infrastructure, develop, and it has to develop. It will be pushed to develop in order to cater to the investments that are coming. So kung nag-i-invest kunwari ang China at ang Russia sa Pilipinas, magtatayo sila ng manufacturing plant sa Pilipinas or ng mining plant, you need to improve your roads, you need to improve your infrastructures in order to create capacities for these investments to actually prosper, to actually happen. Ngayon, dahil nga nag-create ka ngayon ng more infrastructure, nagkakaroon ng development sa country mo, you can now be at par with other countries that also cater to these investors. So sa madaling sabi, the concept of the laissez-faire allows poor countries to be invested on at the same time to develop. However, syempre yung bad effects always comes with it. Pero nabanggit napag-usapan na rin natin yan dun sa nakaraan nating lesson, market integration and global economy. So along with the economic interdependence is the creation of the following regional partnerships: the African Union, the ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the NATO, the Caribbean Community, and the European Union. So these partnerships or regional partnerships ensure that certain countries in regions can trade easier as compared to trading with just unilateral trade. So kung naalala nyo, binanggit ko na to before, na mas madali kasi if, kunwari, yung countries sa Southeast Asia would enter into the ASEAN and have an agreement on how to trade with one another for easier transfer and selling of goods, instead of the Philippines just entering into a unilateral trade with Singapore, entering with a unilateral trade with Malaysia, you entering into a unilateral trade with Indonesia. So mas bumibilis ngayon yung process if all of these ASEAN Southeast Asian countries would just be under one umbrella to which they will adhere to just one agreement. No? Same with the European Union. Ang European Union ang extreme kasi sa European Union, individuals, actual people can enter the member states, no, yung mga countries that are members of the European Union freely. Kung galing ka ng France, you can easily enter Italy because they are both members of the European Union. And ang concept is your entry is acceptable because it will allow investments, it will allow economic prosperity for both countries, no? So, yun yung sinasabi ng slide na yon. The rise of international law and universal principle. With the failure of the League of Nations, the UN, the United Nations, was created in order to facilitate global dialogue, and promote human rights and fundamental freedom. The UN was envisioned to represent people on the basis of their humanity and not of their national membership. So tignan nyo yan. The UN basically do not see people in terms of their citizenship. They look at people, as individuals. Kaya nga, madalas, kapag merong violations on human rights, UN, United Nations, ang madalas na nag-iingay, no? Nagsasalita, because they see people, not as members of certain individuals, certain countries. Yun yung sinasabi ko dun sa nakaraang slide, na humihina ngayon yung kapangyarihan ng Estado pagdating sa supranational forces like the UN, because they see your people as not citizens of the Philippines. They see them as individuals, as actual humans. So, nawawala na yung konsepto na ikaw ay Filipino citizen, you are to abide or you are under a certain Philippine law and a certain Philippine government. So, yan, yun yung point nitong global governance. The good thing, ang kinaganda naman ito, even though it has weakened the state, pangungunahan ko na, even though it has weakened the state, the rise of this international law and the concept of supranational forces being there is that if your state cannot protect you, can no longer protect you and provide for you, you can be protected and provided for in the global world. You have now opportunities to enter because of these supranational forces. Okay, so limitations of the UN. It did not transcend the state system and operates mainly as a forum for states. So ito naman, even though the UN has weakened the state, hindi niya kayang i-replace ang Estado because it is not yet a state system. Okay? So pag sinabing state system, hindi pa siya isang organisasyon na kayang magdikta, na makayang mag-create ng laws, can actually cater to all citizens of the global world. It's still just a forum. Isa lang siyang forum to which the states can actually air their differences. Number two, it is actually unable to prevent atrocities and genocides. And the state's adherence to international laws is still a matter of choice. So, kung mapapansin nyo, even if the presence of the United Nations has weakened the state, it cannot still replace the state. So, merong mahina pa rin siya actually. Katulad yan, may mga countries, ito yung sa susunod na example, the formation of the International Criminal Court. Kung alam nyo bang si Miriam Defensor Santiago ay naging Chief Justice ng International Criminal Court. It is an expansion of the public accountability beyond the state. So, the ICC is actually parang yung Supreme Court mo, pero in a global world. Ang difference, China, India, and US did not actually sign the Rome Statute that ratified the court's founding treaty in January 2014. So, si China, si India, at si US, hindi nila pinirmahan yung Rome Statute na ibig sabihin na that they would subscribe, they would abide with the ICC. So, this would mean that they can evade international law without consequences. Ibig sabihin nito, dahil hindi kami pumirma dito sa kasunduan that recognizes the presence of the ICC, we cannot be subjected to the ICC. Hindi ka pwede ngayon tawagin ng ICC na, China, may ginawa ka sa Pilipinas. This is exactly the reason why certain cases for the West Philippine Sea cannot push through. Although sumasagot ang China, kung magbabasa kayo, sumasagot naman ang China, nagbibigay ng response ang China sa mga ganitong court. Pero hindi sa International Criminal Court yung sa West Philippine Sea, ibang institution, international institution. Pero ang point, sumasagot ang China pero hindi kayang i-push ng international institution na sumunod ang China. Kaya kung nanonood kayo ng TV Patrol or ng 24 Oras, di ba binabanggit doon na ang Pilipinas yung nanalo doon sa tribunal na sinasabi International Tribunal, ibig sabihin sa atin pa rin ng West Philippine Sea. However, China does not recognize the power of the International Tribunal and the verdict of the International Tribunal. Therefore, they would continue what they were doing in the West Philippine Sea. So, yun ang ibig ko sabihin. Kahit na sabihin natin na ang pagkakaroon ng international institutions have replaced certain functions of the state in the international or global world, mahina pa rin sila. No? Hindi pa sila ganun ka-strong because their legitimacy, katulad ng Estado, di ba nabanggit natin dun sa nakaraang video, the legitimacy of the state is dependent on its people. So sa Pilipinas, ang gobyerno natin ay sinusunod natin, kaya siya legitimate, kaya nakakapaggawa pa rin siya, patuloy pa rin siyang nakakapaggawa ng laws, ng policies, ng programs. In terms of the international institutions, ang tao mo ngayon hindi actual individual na tao. At sila ay mga estado. So ang problema mo, mahirap pasunurin ang mga estado under one certain state system. Yun nga, yung katulad ng mga UN, na International Criminal Court. Kaya katulad nun, si China, hindi siya sumusunod sa konsepto, hindi niya nire-recognize yung existence ng International Tribunal, kaya hindi siya susunod. So kahit anong lumabas doon na verdict, hindi siya affected kasi gagalaw pa rin siya as is. Ibig sabihin, walang legitimacy, no, yung international institution. Okay? So I hope that's clear. So beyond trans-governmental networks, universal principles are also advanced by non-state actors. Many CSOs or civil society organizations and think tanks now rank states and release annual indexes. This promote competition of states on moral credibility. So ito yung nandun sa activity na kakapost ko lang, na you have to, instead of this assignment that get the top 10 countries, I instructed you to get the score and rank of the country or state assigned to you in terms of the corruption index, the development or better life index, failed state index, and other indices in order to realize the state's moral credibility or the state identity and its governance. Okay. So the rise of transnational activism. So Margaret Keck and Si Kink described the boomerang pattern of influence as a situation when domestic civil society organizations or CSOs on the losing ends of political struggles within their respective countries join forces with compatible advocacy groups overseas that can pressure the national government in question. So, ano ma'am yung CSOs? According sa World Bank, ang CSO ay isang wide array of organizations. These are community groups, non-governmental organizations, labor unions, indigenous groups, charitable or faith-based organizations. So sila ay tinatawag na third sector of the society along with the government and businesses. So kadalasan, itong mga CSOs ay grupo ng mga tao na nag-cooperate sa isang community. And they are non-state. Ibig sabihin, hindi sila konektado sa gobyerno. They are not for profit. So hindi rin sila nagbebenta ng kung ano. So hindi rin sila kumikita supposedly. And they are voluntary entities. Ngayon, itong slide na to, the rise of transnational activism, sinasabi nito, kung nabanggit kanina na nabawasan doon sa nakaraang slide, nabawas sa nakaraang lesson, there was a decline in ideological mass parties. Ang pumalit is our CSOs or civil society organizations that function in a global scale. So, ang mga example nito, kung babalikan nyo yung dito sa slide na kabila, yung Transparency International, Amnesty International, these are CSOs actually. Kung narinig nyo na yung Amnesty International, it's a CSO that promotes human rights in all countries in the world. So, ang activism nila is, ang pinopromote nila actually is to observe human rights, and the violations that are being done to individuals among countries. So kada bansa mayroong tinatawag na Amnesty International. This is a CSO. The boomerang pattern of influence states, because of the boomerang pattern of influence, states transform their policies and practices, especially with regard to human rights and fundamental freedom. So ayan, napangunahan ko na. Because of CSOs, yung sinasabing boomerang pattern of influence. Di ba, pag nakakita ka ng boomerang, pag binato mo siya, supposedly babalik siya sa'yo. So, ang konsepto nung boomerang pattern of influence, these CSOs, when they promote something, like for example, human rights, ang assumption is that it transcends through various nation states or states, and that it will result to formation of policies and programs in relation to what they're fighting for. So in this relation, human rights. So Kunwari, ang Amnesty International, nakarecognize siya ng human rights violations sa Pilipinas. So, ang gagawin nila, magko-call sila for human rights, respect for human rights among all countries that is supposedly would result to policies that would promote human rights among countries. So, yun yung boomerang effect. Okay? So, example, the international campaign to ban landmines and its coordinator, Jody Williams, was awarded the 1997 Peace Prize. The campaign urges states to sign the Ottawa Treaty with 160 signatories to ban landmines as a weapon of war. So itong example na ito, international campaign ban landmines, is a form of a transnational activism. So pinapirma yung mga countries, 160 countries, that landmines will not be used na as a form of or weapon of war. So kung merong mga countries that would engage in war, landmines will not be, sumunod po sila, even yung mga countries like from the Middle East, supposedly yes, if you want to still promote cooperation, international cooperation, you would follow certain forms of campaigns. So there is a sustained global citizens campaign or the global justice movement that call for alternatives to neoliberal economic globalization. So example, the transnational campaign launched in 1994 by the Zapatista Army of National Liberation in Chiapas, Mexico. So dito, itong example na ito is to delimit, limitahan yung neoliberal economic globalization sa konsepto na instead of subscribing with the free market concept, ay magkaroon pa rin ng concept ng localized economic prosperity. So, ibig sabihin ng localized economic prosperity, the government can have a stronghold, in terms of promoting local products, in terms of promoting the local market. Okay. The global justice movement as a vehicle for citizens to interact beyond the nation-state continued to expand, particularly with the entry of the World Social Forum, which was a counterpoint for the World Economic Forum. So according to Sidney Taro, global framing refers to the domestic political and social activists linking their claim with more widely recognized claims, causes, and symbols. So meron na tayong tinatawag na global framing to which yung mga activists would now try to situalize yung domestic, political, and social situations sa kanilang mga estado in order to find similarities in causes and symbols. So kung mapapansin, itong topic natin, from global interstate system, pumunta tayo sa global governance, ito ay papunta na tayo sa concept ng global citizenship. Kaya wala na tayong PowerPoint for global citizenship. Okay? So the global civil society activists succeed or fail depending on how they will be received by governments. So example, revolutions in Tunisia and Egypt in 2011 showed how engaged citizens could topple dictatorships. So protests in Myanmar helped along by cyber activism eventually pushed the government to open up partially. So merong mga revolutions that were successful because the government was actually threatened. So sa Tunisia and Egypt, they saw how citizens have the power to actually topple the dictatorship. Same with Myanmar through cyber activism. Okay. Network society, termed by Manuel Castells, refers to citizens' use of the networks to gain power relative to states by generating alternative discourses. So this neutralized the state's use of violence. So yung network society, ito yung sabayang pag-call, sabihin ng pag-call, instead of going to the streets and protesting, the network society promotes that individuals refer to alternative discourses. Ibig sabihin, yung mga pag-uusap, seminars, yung forums that would actually result to policies and changes in society. So Evgeny Morozov describes the many uphill battles facing democracy activists in dictatorships around the world. So especially if the forum is done in a worldwide scale, yung capacity niya to promote, no, yung makagawa ng change is still possible instead of actually going to streets to topple a dictatorship. So the internet has also empowered the secret police, the censors, and the propaganda offices of modern authoritarian regime. So example, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Myanmar silence bloggers using software programs that filter internet content and denial of service attack. So because of the internet, no, individuals can come together and have a certain voice, no, especially in pinpointing the wrongs of a certain state. However, katulad nga dito, si Russia, nabanggit ko sa inyo, na post-communist regime ito, they would of course refer to the internet as something that they have to silence, no, in order to erase or erase the capacity of activists to talk in the internet. Democratization of censorship has a chilling effect on freedom of expression. So kung napapansin nyo, lalo na sa Facebook ngayon, di ba, tuwing maraming mga taong sasalita tungkol sa mga DDS, sa mga dilawan, then meron mga individuals that would say na it's not about being a DDS or a dilawan, it's about promoting the concept of democracy. So kung mapapansin nyo, marami ng opinion na lumalabas, no? However, interactive e-government sites have spread worldwide in tandem with constitutional democracies. Hindi lahat ng bansa would practice the concept of voicing out, no? Voicing out your opinions. There is a dramatic rise in state-funded television networks diversifying the landscape of global electronic news gathering. So malaki yung role ng internet, pero maswerte tayo, at least for the Philippines, that we're exposed and we have the capacity to use the internet to voice our opinions, to create a certain, to express our freedom, no, and democracy in the internet. However, may mga countries na hindi ganon. Like for example, sa China, may mga tao sa China na cannot access sites such as Facebook or YouTube because this would allow them to actually voice certain opinions that their policies or laws would not permit. So sa Pilipinas, siguro, hindi nyo naisip, akala nyo siguro yung nararanasan yung freedom sa Pilipinas ay nararanasan din sa ibang bansa. Hindi po. So freedom of expression, freedom to assemble, freedom to the other freedoms associated with the 1987 Constitution are not necessarily found in other states' policies and laws. So may mga bansang hindi nagpa-practice ng kapareho nating freedoms. So in relation to this slide, kung mapapansin natin, maraming tayo ay naging maswerte to have the capacity to use the internet in order to promote or to express our democracy. So concluding points, globalization coincides with the state and indeed has spurred the creation of many new states, while many nations and ethnic, linguistic, and religious communities long submerged within existing states, rising up and demanding statehood themselves. So, dun sa activity nyo, hindi ko lang sure kung meron sa inyo nakakuha ng mga ibang mga states na, like say for example, yung mga dating naka-under sa malalaking estado, no? So, yung konsepto ng globalization actually opened up doors for certain small states to rise on their own. Yan yung mga pinakikita natin dyan, yung mga Maldives, yung mga mga small states that rise because they had the capacity to rise because of globalization. So states now operate in world in which power is dispersed both horizontally through the civic society and the marketplace, and vertically through international organizations, subnational political authorities, and secession movements. So, pag sinabi mong horizontally, ito yung mga magkakapareho, nasa isang field. So, you have the civil society organizations and the marketplace. Pag vertically naman, ito yung mga international organizations that have hierarchy. Okay? So, subnational political authorities. Okay? So, may mga hierarchies yan. Globalization shapes states and states in turn shape globalization. That is true. Because of the benefits and costs of globalization are unevenly distributed across states and population, life chances for individual citizens are heavily determined by the particular states they are from. So kung mapapansin, yung benefits at saka yung cost ng globalization can be translated to the citizens depending on the state. That's why I push for the activity na magkaroon kayo ng iba't ibang states na mapag-venture, because I want you to know, no, to at least open your mind to at least one state aside from the Philippines, except for those, meron akong mga binigyan ng Philippines pa rin. Pero the actual discussion with your classmate would open your mind to how states are different and how the benefits and costs of globalization can actually transcend to their citizens, especially in particular problems such as the pandemic. So kung kaya napansin nyo, yung activity na ginawa ay nagpapakita ng kung paanong ang Estado shaped the globalization and how globalization shaped the state. So dahil nagkaroon ng pandemic brought about by globalization, actually kung tutuusin, the opening of states with one another has caused the widespread of COVID-19, kasi kung in the first place we're not very yung hindi tayo nakakapag-migrate or nakakapag-migrate from one country to another, hindi siya mag-i-spread na kasing bilis as expected. So kung mapapansin, yung konsepto of the state shaping globalization and globalization shaping the state is very evident in how we responded with how COVID-19 has become a problem, global problem, and how we responded to that problem. Okay. So states set the agendas and also drive the terms of cooperation that govern the world's leading international organizations. States also craft and uphold the common standards that emerge from these institutions. So may mga international organizations na kahit naman anong gawin natin are still under the influence of leading states, no, yung mga developed states, no. Ang thing na lang is that you would not, like for example, developing countries would not join the United Nations if they believe that it does not uphold certain standards that would promote the interests of the Filipinos. So globalization places states into direct competition. That's nabanggit na rin yan. States now compete on a variety of fronts. In economic policies and in terms of favorable incentives for multinational corporations to locate within their jurisdiction, tourist campaigns, etc. So kung mapapansin, ang globalization also put states into competition. So hindi laging cooperation, hindi laging create ka ng power block, no? Na let's say for example, ang Philippines makikipag agreement with another powerful state. Kadalasan, itong mga states rin na ito ay in competition. Actually, mas madalas na in competition because in order to be developed, it's inevitable that you need to get multinational corporations and transnational corporations at your side at the expense of another state. So, kailangan mong kalabanin ng isang estado in order for investors to come to you and in order for development and growth to occur. Okay. So, ito yung source. So, this would be the conclusion of our topics in global governance, global interstate system, and global citizenship. Please watch the videos because the videos are very helpful, especially in terms of the global citizenship aspect, because it pertains more on the international institutions such as the United Nations and the likes. Okay, so I'll see you in the online class. And for questions, you please don't hesitate to email me or to put it in our Google Classroom. Thank you very much and keep safe.